I have 5:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. First on the agenda, we have the Southwest Prime Service discussion. Lynn.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Council. We met about a month ago to discuss the Southwest Prime Service and the ridership levels in the city of Carver. So I just wanted to recap tonight that Prime is a service, transportation service offered here in Carver, and it is subsidized by the city of Carver. And we pay about $10 per rider, and the rider pays $4. And the rider can request a ride to anywhere, kind of Victoria. I mean, there's specialty areas they can go down to the Mall of America, the airport. They can request a ride via their mobile app or a telephone call. And for the past 3 years, this service has kind of grown in the city of Carver, and we are up to 823 riders actually year to date, as compared to last year at this time we were at 455 riders. So it's really grown in popularity and has become a topic of discussion for the council as the 2023 budget season is approaching. So we just kind of wanted to come here tonight again, and we are here with Southwest Transit's Chief Operations Officer and another hat wearing Matt Fighton to help give us some more information on both Prime and the Carver bus service. And I just wanted to thank you for joining us tonight, Matt.
My pleasure, and thanks for the introduction. And Mayor and council members, thanks for having me. Good to see you, everyone.
Good to see you too. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. So I think Lynn did a nice job laying out. There's a lot here, but I'll unpack it. In terms of what Southwest Prime is offering currently in Carver. So I'll start with Prime, but also give an update on the express bus service as well. So as Lynn had pointed out rightfully, Southwest Prime is our on-demand and also scheduled microtransit service. Microtransit really being kind of a fancy name for what I like to say modern dial-a-ride. It's really kind of public transit's version of Uber and Lyft. We were one of the first, if not the first, public transit agencies in the nation to implement a service like this back in 2016, with Carver contracted with us, I believe, starting 2019 or 19, I believe, 18 or 19. We'll get to that slide. We offer, Prime has grown significantly, not just, I know it's growing here in Carver, but it's grown significantly over the last 6 years since we started operation. We started, I want to say, a few hundred rides the first year, and now we're pushing close to 100,000 rides on an annual basis. So Prime has evolved, particularly during the pandemic, to really be a suite of services. So I'll kind of go through each of the types of services that are offered as part of the Prime service. There are quite a few subsets of services these are services that are all offered to Carver residents as well under the contract with the city. So we have what I call our standard Prime. This is, your kind of general dial-a-ride demand response service anywhere within the Southwest Prime service area. And for Southwest Transit purposes, our Southwest Prime service area is communities of Eden Prairie, Chanhassen, and Chaska, and we contract with Carver and Victoria. So anybody within all those 5 communities can travel anywhere within those 5 communities. Totally on-demand service for that. There's a phone app that you can use, like you would Uber and Lyft. You can also call in like you would in the old dial-a-ride days. Easy number to remember, 952-SW Prime.
And Matt, would you mind just, for the city council's benefit, explain the difference between contracting for Prime, like Victoria and Carver do,
yes,
and then your Southwest communities like Chaska, Chan, Eden Prairie, and the distinguishment between those communities and how this all works?
Yeah, certainly. So Southwest Transit is a joint powers agency between the communities of Eden Prairie, Chaska, and Chanhassen. So those 3 communities, we are essentially parts of those 3 communities to provide transit service under an opt-out arrangement. I won't, the details back in the 80s, we were able to opt out of what was then the Metro Transit Commission, which ultimately created the suburban transit agencies that we know today, Southwest Transit being one of them. Minnesota Valley consists of 7 communities now that opted out. Minnetonka, Lakeville have opt-out status, and but contract with Metro Transit for their transit services. And then Plymouth and Maple Grove have their own transit agencies that they operate as well. So those being the opt-out status, they also are part of the Transit Taxing District, which is also known as the Transit Capital Levy District, which affords them the ability to have public transit opt-out service. Carver and Victoria are a little different in that regard, where you do not collect you're not charged tax on property tax for the Transit Capital Levy District. It's a negotiation between Southwest Transit and the communities of Carver and Victoria that allow for this service to happen through that contract arrangement.
Yeah.
Did I get it all?
Yeah.
All right.
And because of that JPA, those three communities aren't paying per ride for Prime.
Correct. It's part of, by paying into the transit taxing district, it affords them public transit service, which they created via Southwest Transit, which then, there's a whole different funding mechanism through the motor vehicle sales tax, state motor vehicle sales tax, that funds public transit throughout the entire region, and they receive a portion of those funds for operation in their communities that pays for the subsidizing of these services, as all public transit is subsidized to a pretty significant extent.
And Matt touched on it's complex, it's simple, but the joining the transit taxing district doesn't necessarily guarantee you service. Like
Also true.
bus service, etc. So, one of the things Matt's been involved with this kind of from the get-go, but when the city was looking at joining the transit taxing district informally, 5 or 6 years ago, that was a kind of a key point that Met Council made to the city is joining that doesn't necessarily guarantee you that you're going to have bus routes, but it's part of, I would say, like the fee or participating in the program is to join it, but then there's also, we could have a whole other work session on the financing of transit, but
Yes.
my point in kind of making that is that joining the transit taxing district wouldn't necessarily provide the city with kind of free prime service, correct?
Correct. And that would be, to Brent's point, it's also not a guarantee, let's say, and I'm not saying that this would be the case, but if the city were to join the transit taxing district, it wouldn't be guaranteed that you would be folded into Southwest Transit. That would be a negotiation between, the Southwest Transit communities and the city, if that's where the city wanted to go. But, there's an example, Lakeville being a good example, where they got opt-out status, and really it was between MBTA and Metro Transit. They really put their service out to bid in a sense. And Metro Transit ended up securing that service. So it's not a guarantee that you would be part of any one particular provider if you were to join the transit taxing district, nor is it a guarantee that you would even necessarily have that opt-out status. That's a whole separate legislative process that has to be really opened up in a sense by the legislature for communities to opt out of the Met Council, the transit taxing. It gets confusing in a hurry, as Brent said.
Okay, sorry.
But, just so the city, you wouldn't be guaranteed to be in Southwest Transit under that scenario as well. So, sorry if that was a little jumbled, but makes sense?
Mhm.
All right. So yeah, getting back to the Prime service, in terms of the services that are provided, so we have our standard Prime, that's on-demand service operated Monday through Friday from 5:30 to 7 p.m., Saturday from 6 to 5:30, and that's for really all of these services that we offer under the Prime suite of services as it's turning into now. So anywhere within those 5 communities, you can travel during those times of day. It is $4 per passenger for the Prime service. That is on demand only for that service, meaning you cannot schedule in advance. So when you need a ride, you either use the phone app or you call us up. We book the ride for you. We'll give you an ETA. It generally averages between 10 and 20 minutes, depending on the time of the day. We try and keep our average pickup time at most at 20 minutes. So that means, real busy times during the day, you can get wait times up to 40, 50 minutes, but we try and limit the amount of times that will occur. Most people are pretty happy with the service and get that pickup before 20 minutes though. Another subset of our services that we offer is what we call Prime MD. So this is non-emergency medical transportation to medical facilities in and around the Southwest Prime service area. So within all 5 communities, as well as 2 clinics outside of our service area. So the big ones being Ridgeview and Laconia, St. Francis and Shakopee, Methodist in St. Louis Park, Fairview and Edina, as well as a host of other clinics. So if it's a clinics, we'll go north into Minnetonka area, Edina, Shakopee, Laconia, and then parts of Hopkins as well. So how that service works is you can call up to 14 days in advance to schedule a service. to your appointment. So you know what time your medical appointment is, you call, let us know. You gotta be there by X amount of time. Then the system we have will schedule it automatically for that person, give them notification of when they're gonna be picked up at their location to make sure they get to their appointment on time. Then since people don't really know how long it's gonna take for their doctor's appointments, we treat their return ride really as an on-demand ride on the way back. So just give us a call when you're done with your appointment. Again, we'll be there generally within 20 minutes, sometimes faster, to pick you up and bring you back to your home. And that service is $5 per ride each way. And that is also, we have two separate agreements with the city, one for Prime and one for Prime MD. So I'll go into some detail there a little later on. Yes?
So the Prime MD, are we still subsidizing $10 on that, or is that going to be $9?
The way the agreements are set up right now, it's the city, it's set up, I don't remember the history behind why it isn't necessarily this way, it's before my time. But the city is paying $10 for Prime per ride for all rides that originate within Carver. If rides terminate within the city of Carver, the city's not charged for that. Then with Prime MD, it's different where you're charged the $5 for each ride, whether it terminates or ends.
The city is, or the rider?
The riders charge the fare that I show there, so $5, the rider pays that, and then the city is charged
The 10?
the $10
Okay.
total.
Got it.
And then, yeah, so that's Prime MD, that's our non-emergency medical service, and then you're actually getting a new flavor of some of our marketing. This, what we're gonna be calling Prime Edge, which is as we are expanding the Prime service area beyond the standard Prime service area. Right now we have areas of Shakopee, we just opened up Edina, and then the 494 corridor, all the way to the Mall of America, is a service that you can also book as part of either same day or on demand. That's on the phone or over the phone and the phone app as well. That ranges from $4, our standard Prime fare, and the $6 kicks in when you are east of 35W on 494. So most people going to the Mall of America in that scenario are paying the $6 for that service. And again, that's covered. These other services other than Prime MD are all covered under the city's Prime contract. So you're paying that $10 for all of these trips outside of the Prime MD. Prime Airport service, another subset of services. So this is scheduled service to and from MSP. That's $8 per passenger. That's call-in only, but up to 14 days in advance, making sure that we get you there to the airport in time, both terminals 1 and 2. Yes, sir. Glenn.
So I have a flight Wednesday morning at 5:15. I have to be there at 3 o'clock. I take it that if I look down there, hours of operation, I can't use that service.
You have to be there at 5:15?
No, flight leaves at 5:15.
Oh, flight leaves. Yeah, we won't be able to make that work. So sorry.
Jeez.
So it's a growing service. We acknowledge it's not going to cover everyone, but it is certainly a growing service and a popular service. And I think you'll see with the numbers increasing in Carver as well. That we're seeing a fair amount coming out of Carver. And then Prime Essentials is $2 a ride to and from grocery and convenience stores. That's Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. This really was a service that came about during the pandemic, where we said, okay, where on our Prime service are we seeing kind of those lower ridership times? And it was really from that 9 noon time period where we had some capacity on the system. We said, well, we want to make sure that people can get out to buy their essential goods during the pandemic, and it became popular, and we still are able to do that under the current demand that we're seeing. So that's also a very popular service, and that's pretty much to any grocery convenience store within, think of Walgreens, CVS, Holiday, any of the major grocery stores as well, that will take riders to, and that's only $2 each way. And then some other just information on the fare. We accept cash or credit or debit card. You can set it up like you would with an Uber or Lyft app, where you can store your credit card or debit card on our app and just pay for it that way, or you can pay on the vehicle via cash or with a credit card using the Square swipe that we have on the vehicles. Children ages 5 and unders with paid adult are free. We also have we call a transit assistance program for for qualifying participants that meet certain income thresholds, they can qualify for our TAP program on Prime, which allows them to ride the service at $2 per ride. Really any of these services except for the airport service. And then we have our Senior Mondays, which is $2 on Mondays from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock for seniors riding our service as well.
I'm not there yet.
No, not but we don't really check IDs either, although
Oh, there you go, Glenn.
it's not the most stringent.
Matt, you listed all the fares for all of those. Are you limited by the Met Council for what you can charge for some of those?
That is a good question, and I think an interesting question right now. It's technically because the service is considered a microtransit service, the region really doesn't have a set of fare standards adopted yet for this type of service, so we have some leeway in what we can charge. In fact, we're looking at, there's a lot of services here that it's grown, where we're currently looking at how can we simplify this to be more digestible for people, and also simplifying the fare setup. Right now, we are having discussions about moving the general fare to cover all of these trips that you're seeing to just be $5 for all of the services, except for airport. We'll probably bump that up to $10. We still think that's a pretty significant deal, considering most people are paying $30 to get to the airport. I should note on the airport too, once you get to 3 people in your party, we just cut it off saying, it's $24 to ride, unless you get up to 6 people in your party, then you're paid a little bit more than that.
I have a question, and maybe you'll address it later, but, and if I'm jumping ahead, we can certainly wait. But, so if we have Prime and Prime MD right now and Prime Airport, are we allowed to pick and choose between those? Because for me, Prime Airport, if you can afford to get on a flight, I think you can probably afford to drive. So we're subsidizing people's flights to the airport. I'm sure I know it's convenient.
Yeah.
But, so is it something where we could say we'll do standard Prime and Prime MD, but we're not doing the Prime Airport?
Certainly, and that's a good point. That's something that I think just as we've just rolled out services, we've always just told parentheses that this is what you get for, contracting with us for Prime, but that's a valid point. That's something that we certainly, you just let us know and we can arrange that to make that be the case.
Okay.
For really any of these suites of services. Because in the current contract, it's not really spelled out as primary, it's just really Prime services. And so as these have been added on, we'll need to look at amendments, so that might be a good time to have those discussions.
Thank you.
And then I also just wanted to point out on here, I posted a picture of our newest vehicle. This is a new electric vehicle that we have for the Prime service, a Volvo.
But I want to get there.
What's that?
Glenn, stop.
It's got a range of 250 miles. We're hoping it'll work out, but they're not in service yet. They're going to be, so we got 2 of them. We're going to put them into service next week. We'll see how it goes.
Sound effects. Okay, this is a third of our agenda for this work session, so let's motor on through.
There we go. All right. So just some ridership trends. As Lennon and Brent pointed out, Prime is growing in popularity within the city. You can see 2021 was a significant increase in ridership, most likely due to multiple factors. Obviously, we're in the middle of the pandemic. There has been quite a shift from our fixed route services to Prime services. This was during the time where all of these services that I was discussing that were added, a lot of them started to catch on with some popularity as well. And then, just the growth of Carver in general, I think has been lending to these numbers and increase, and just awareness of the service. You can see in 2022, you're already on pace. This is through 5 months. You're certainly on pace to go above the amount of trips that were provided in 2021 as well. And then just here's the monthly breakdown. You can see this is pretty typical. We'll see higher ridership in the winter months, a little bit of dip once we get into the spring and summer months, and then we'll see an increase in ridership again come the fall and the end of the year.
So when this says Prime, it encompasses all of the 3 months that we have. Okay.
That's correct.
Do you have that broke down by?
I unfortunately do not. I can get those numbers for you in terms of what we have. I was just sitting here, I was like, I should have pulled the airport rides separate, but I can definitely get that to Brent.
And the Edge hasn't started yet.
It hasn't. It's not branded that way, but we could certainly get those rides
But you
broken out as well.
You could do you could segregate MD as well. flow.
Yeah, I'll give you a whole breakdown.
Great.
And you just want this year, or we'll talk out.
Was the airport service in 2021 too?
Yes.
Okay, if I could just get last year and
Yeah.
this year to date, that'd be great.
No problem. Quick note. All right. Any other questions on Prime? Otherwise, I'll move quickly, just kind of where things are at in the express room. So, this is a somewhat depressing graph. This is not atypical of what transit has seen across the nation. You can see, when the pandemic hit in 2020, the vast majority of those rides were up through March, and then everything fell off a cliff. Our express ridership was down over 90%. It was no different with Carver service, certainly over 90% decrease in ridership from 2019 to 2021. We can see in 2022, that's through May, so on pace for probably a little north of 500 rides right now through 2022. That's certainly a slower increase than we've seen across our system. We took about a 90% dip. We're probably up, in addition, we probably gained 15% of that back overall, but Carver service is still down significantly at that 90% or more decrease from pre-pandemic levels. But you can see the trend line is going the right way throughout this year, so hopefully that trend continues on the express side.
Is a passenger each way or round trip?
This is counting each individual trip, so really one passenger divided by two.
Okay,
Really
so
easy
60 rides for May was 30 passengers.
30 people.
30 round trips.
And just some quick highlights, some other notes of information. So on the express services, we're currently operating just 2 a.m. trips out of Carver Station, 4 p.m. trips to Carver Station. Just for comparison purposes, pre-pandemic, we were at 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. This was operated under contract as part of the CMAQ award for the original Carver Station, I believe in 2014. Current contract for fixed route services is through 2022. And this contract is arranged up where the city is only charged for time that service is operated between Carver Station and East Creek Station. So everything that touches Carver Station in our service on the express front either goes to or from East Creek and Chaska. So the way it's set up, you can see there's more trips in the PM that we have, but those don't always have passengers on them. And if they don't have passengers on them, we don't charge the city for that time because we won't go out to Carver Station since it's the end of the line. And then Prime, we kind of went through this. City charge $5 per ride on Prime MD. All other Prime service, $10 for rides that are only originating within city limits. If it terminates, we're not charging. And then contracts for both Prime and Prime MD are renewed on an annual basis with the city right now. With that, I will take any questions or comments.
Questions? Any additional? You asked my question about can we kind of a la carte?
Yeah.
Prime MD, Prime Airport, so.
Yep. I will get those numbers to Brent and Lynn ASAP, so that you guys have them to review.
And I noticed you said the current contract is through 2022, so I assume we're gonna need another contract with extension through the end of the CMAQ grant.
Yeah, that's something we were gonna be approaching staff soon on those negotiations to see where that goes. And one thing to note with the CMAQ award, we haven't gotten any indication, I'm not sure if city staff has at all, in terms of what the time horizon is for these dollars. We had heard some rumblings from the Met Council, who administers these funds, that they may be looking at time limits for these types of services, because it's supposed to be, in theory, 3 years of demonstration service with a CMAQ award. Obviously, we're well beyond that, and there's funds available for many years beyond where we are right now. We haven't heard anything, just I want the council to be aware that that is something that could potentially come down from Met Council, where they can come and say, City of Carver, you are 10 years past your 3 years initially. We need to turn off the spigot. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I just want the council to be aware that it's a possibility. And obviously, we'll work with city staff if we hear anything on that front as well.
And I think you may have said this, apologies if you did. You said that Carver is still down by 90% on our daily service.
I believe that the initial drop was, I think, 96%. I think it's still down 93%.
Is that a greater percentage than what you're seeing in Chaska, Chan, and DP?
Yes, I'd say we were down initially about 90%, and now in those communities, it's as you get further out, we're seeing greater decline. So Eden Prairie would be coming back faster than, say, Chaska, for example. Right now, we're at about 70 or 30% of pre-pandemic ridership at this point, so still a 70% decrease overall.
The uptake, the opposite of that then is the uptake in all the prime rides.
Yeah, that's, I mean, our prime service overall, I mean, it's great to see what's happening in Carver in terms of ridership. In our world, we like seeing that. And we're already past pre-pandemic levels on the prime service. So.
But that's from a budget perspective,
Yeah.
it's not the same,
Nope.
like, rider,
Right.
because they're different destinations.
Right.
Any questions?
That's mine.
Great.
Thanks for coming in today.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Can you send me a copy of the PowerPoint? We already have it.
Yep.
Okay, great.
You ever hear from
Those
those
tomorrow.
retired guys?
All
What's
right.
that?
You ever hear from the retired guys?
One of them's not so retired still. He's going to be with us for a little while longer. We'll see.
All right, moving on, let's talk about the preservation ordinance. Mr. Mayor.
To Mayor and Council, my apologies on the late arrival, just kind of working through some preparations on the phone with the city engineer, so they're ready to deliver you the message you need to hear for the water treatment plant, et cetera. So, going over the preservation ordinance, the HPC, or Heritage Preservation Commission, has been working on this for quite some time, identified a need to revise the ordinance, which hasn't been done at least in the last 12 years. You can see kind of a basic outline. I would call it essentially a cleanup. Dave Anderson kind of wrote a amended or changed ordinance based on feedback that we had. We kind of had a listening session with the commission. But in my mind, what this does is kind of formalize kind of in our, what I call kind of current state of affairs and operation administration of the HPC and preservation rules. A lot of these things we're kind of utilizing already as best practices. But you know, an example is to make sure that our design guidelines are memorialized in our city code for commercial and residential, rather than just having them as kind of floating documents out there. And I think a big piece that has been a kind of front and center for the HPC for a number of years has been what happens when someone violates a preservation order. And so that's clearly laid out within the contents of the ordinance or proposed ordinance. Just because I'm gonna hand this off, the second part, there was a pretty robust discussion regarding kind of the enforcement procedures that Dave Anderson, the city attorney, laid out. And because you know, from a staff perspective, I kind of objected to the changes. I want to make sure that they're presented at an unbiased point of view. So Councilmember Mock, if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing the city attorney's thoughts, and then you were at the meeting as well, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with the council.
Sure. So as Brent mentioned, for a number of years, you know, there's been some, what do we do if somebody violates? And there just wasn't anything written into our ordinances to take care of that. So the commission reviewed what our city attorney had to say, and they felt that it was right on the mark, and it's a misdemeanor, and then it goes through that you know, court system. So we don't, it's not something that the city comes down and like hands out on their own. So it was, the commission was very comfortable with that. You'll see in here on the note that during the meeting, Commissioner Pasco had talked about when and how or if the council is notified of if there is a violation, so that the HPC is aware and then the council is aware. He had some questions about whether the council should be the one who, it comes to us and we basically, you know, like give our stamp of approval that we go towards pressing with the misdemeanor. And one of the things is that Brent is great staff. He's very communicative with us. We obviously know this, but what if Brent becomes someone else and they maybe don't follow the same, I guess, the same protocols that he does just by being the staff person he is, not because it's written in some policy or something like that. I also mentioned as a council person that I don't feel necessary if it comes from the commission and then goes to the city manager that the council then has any judicial responsibility to vote yes or no to send something as a misdemeanor. We don't do that for any other building inspections that come through and are code violators. So to me, the HPC commission would obviously know that this has happened, and then we would go through those steps. I don't want to be put in, and I'll only speak for myself, but I'd imagine the same. I don't want to be put in a position where it looks like we're saying yes or saying no to somebody's code violation. So informally, we want Brent to obviously report to the commission and report to council that this is going on. And then it was talked about whether we put it into a policy format or not. I'm comfortable right now not going that route, knowing that Brent is expected to communicate with us. I mean, there's job performance issues if Brent is not communicating with us that would be overarching rather than just saying, here's a policy for just this. So I was inclined to put my opinion that no, we don't need it to come obviously through us, through those channels. As long as we are being well informed by staff, then we don't have any problems. Otherwise it becomes a larger issue than just doing this anyways. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I think that was a really good summary. I think the perspective, and this isn't a personal one, it's just whether it's my position or any of the others, is we have, as you know, dozens, maybe even hundreds of potential code violations. And the step of taking it to the council before it goes to, in this case, it would be the county attorney's office for prosecution, is, it seems like a step that I think Councilmember Mott kind of alluded to, is all of a sudden you are putting the council in a position whether or not you feel like the code has been violated. So it's like a second check of staff's work before it goes to the county attorney, who is also gonna kind of do that, because they're not gonna pursue prosecution unless, you know, the tenets of the code have been violated. And so for me, it was a consistency piece. It was a kind of a slippery slope of like getting the council involved in code enforcement work, which I believe that the city's intentionally tried to kind of keep you out of, so you don't, you make the policy, draft the ordinances, if you don't like what's in them, we change them. But that was ultimately, and Commissioner Pascal made it clear that this didn't have anything to do with existing staff, but just kind of a concern about process. And so that's kind of the heart of it, I think.
Yeah, and then, so the ordinance too now with all of the cleanup, there was, I mean, as Brent was saying, this has not been looked at, and I would imagine it's been much longer than 12 years that this has not been looked at. There was some, interesting language in here that you could tell was from days gone by. But I think too, the HPC is really great at working with our design standards and guidelines and really following those and working with the homeowner and working with those and also being realistic. So I think they were very comfortable with this. I was very comfortable with this. And it does then put a little bit of teeth behind it though, because one of the questions that has been coming up for 6 years now that I've been is, what do we do if someone is doing what they're supposed to? What if we say that you don't receive a certificate of appropriateness for this and then go and do it anyways? So this puts it right in writing and in with our ordinances, and I really like it. I think it's great. I think it came out really well.
So then the last piece, just for process, we want to take this to the work session, because the next step would be a public hearing at the planning commission level. So one day, in essence, get a sign from the council that you're okay with this proceeding with the process, because then it would go to that planning commission meeting and then eventually make its way for a recommendation from the planning commission back to the city council. But if there are substantive changes that you'd like to see or questions that you had, we wanted to try to identify those in this setting before going to a public hearing on the ordinance change or proposed ordinance change.
Apologies if it's in the memo, I passed the HPC unanimously with 5 voting members.
We had 3 there that night, but it did pass. And the, I don't want to speak personally for the rest of the members, but I know that they were they were looking forward to this ordinance coming through.
I know, I was at the meeting where you guys like
Yeah.
kinda kicked it off, and I know that this was something that was a long time coming,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we ended up getting it earlier than we thought we would, so. good job.
Well, in one piece, they didn't officially vote on it, they,
I'm sorry.
it's gonna go here, go to the public hearing, and if there's any changes, that final form will go to the HPC, and then they'll recommend
Yeah.
that piece.
They unanimously recommended pushing this forward. They didn't, I guess it wasn't.
But there wasn't a vote.
Correct.
Got it.
And Dave was there too, it was kind of a collaborative of like, it didn't need to be voted on. It was just, yes, send this through to the city council.
When you said Dave was here, Dave Anderson,
Yes.
okay,
Mhm.
there are 3 in that group. So
Yeah,
just-
there was Dave 1, 2, and 3 in that meeting, but there was a lot of
That's a
Dave,
lot.
and a lot of attorneys, because they're all attorneys.
That was. Okay, so, okay, or can we comment now?
Yes.
Okay. I have some specific things about the ordinance, but before that, kind of addressing, the comments made by Commissioner Pasco. Almost a second before you said them, you talked about a lot of these already, but, you communicate really well. And I think that that's a expectation of city councils uniformly, that they have a city manager who will communicate with them. So, I don't know which one of you said it, but if, 16 city managers from now and 18 councils from now, if there's a city manager who isn't communicating this stuff with the council, that's a bigger job performance concern. This also goes back to, how many years ago was it? It was the first year that we were on the ballot for city council, so probably 6 years ago. There was a referendum item changing the city's form of government from the city administrator to the city manager,
Mhm.
which might be a little bit of history that Commissioner Pasco is not aware of. And that it took a referendum vote to be where we're at, and we as a community, by an overwhelming majority, voted to take this out of council's hands and put it into the city manager's hands.
We did have a discussion with him, and Brent explained that form of government too during the meeting.
Okay.
So he did become aware that
Great.
that was the process and how it happened, and that that's where we're at.
Okay, super. And same thing, we're only meeting every 2 to 3 weeks. And so I think that this just makes things more nimble, easier, and, like you said, we have numerous other code violations. It just seems weird to take one thing out of your job title, job duties. And,
I don't want like the
I
silt fence violation up in the new to come to council every
No,
time. You know what I mean? So-
Well, and again, I think we have talked, it's probably been a while, and I know that there was a previous mayor who was really focused on, 10,000 foot level stuff, right? Code violation, while it's really, really, really important, feels more like 10-foot level. And I think we as council should be having a broader view. And that's why we have Brent and everybody else, all of our great city staff who can do that. So, do you have any comments on that before I go into the, okay. Want to weigh in how you feel?
I like the changes. I know the biggest thing is the enforcement. That's been an issue since I started out in council. So as long as there's a little bit of teeth, I think it's a good thing.
Do you have thoughts? Do you want to comment on thoughts on if council should handle this or keeping it with Brent?
Keeping it with
Okay. I just wanted you to go on record
Mhm.
That's fine.
for that, okay. Let's see, just the notes that I jotted down, and I'm sorry, this is really in the weeds, but when we are on it would be the 3rd page of the packet, the first item of the ordinance, 2-305B,
Okay,
that's the second bullet point in there. I think that that last may that's struck still needs to be in there. Well, you know what? Maybe not, because okay,
there's a colon.
got it. Okay, I see that. Okay, we'll get past that one. Sorry.
Okay.
The second page, again, super nitpicky. Section 2-348. I think National Register, the N and the R need to be capitalized.
Where are we?
Just under section 2, right here, where it says, the commission shall make no application to the National Register, and that's not capitalized.
And then,
I'm right in front of you,
the only other thing, is just kind of a general question. It doesn't necessarily relate. I'm not sure what section this needs to go into, but I think we need to add language that says just because we issue a certificate of appropriateness, that doesn't mean that the building permit has been or will be approved. Because remember, we went through that earlier.
Yeah, so we have that on our application and we have that on our issuance when they get the permit. So we have those in those 2 spots.
Okay, does it need to go in here just to?
I can ask Steve, I'm having like a flashback where somehow he has that in here.
Okay,
You remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, I am having the same one, where we talked about it, or we put it in here.
it says it,
Someone that
It's
asked it.
D, is it?
so there's D on page 4, but that says,
So no city permit for work permit.
so that says that the city permit won't be issued without the certificate of appropriateness. I guess I'm asking for the.
There is something, if you just give me a
Okay.
second here.
The building official shall deny any building permit application for such work without a duly issued certificate of appropriateness.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a certificate of appropriateness doesn't consent to giving you a building permit.
Well, I think this is that stated almost, but just backwards, because it's saying the building official shall deny it when you come in for application
Well, this,
without.
Just,
I'll verify that
okay,
the appropriate language is in there to address your concern.
okay, that would be great, just because we did have someone who got there was confusion around that.
Yep, that's fine, if that sentence, I know that sentence, but if I see this, right? So if you're reading it and it's not coming clear, then let's wordsmith that some more.
So, that's all I have.
Well, here, I found it. Other permits required.
Can I ask where you're at?
Yeah, it's on page 2, section 2366C. Other permits required. Besides the certificate of appropriateness, any other applicable city permit shall be required for proposed work, including but not necessarily limited to permits required pursuant to the building code.
Okay.
So that's a good
Good.
point.
Okay.
I just remember someone asked almost your
Yeah.
exact same question and you explained it, I guess.
Okay,
One
No,
I
thing
think that
for a
covers
second.
what you're looking for.
yeah,
See?
yeah, that's
Okay.
good. Yeah, it was just one of the things that I thought of after reading it, and I was like, oh, I don't think I saw that, so.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, I'm good with that.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, item number 4, the 2023 employee pay scale. Shooty.
Great, thank you. All right, as we begin to ease into the 2023 budget season, staff has started looking at the employee pay scale and how it may change for 2023. I'm just gonna get plugged in here so I can pull something up for you guys. All right. So we're gonna be looking at the pay scale and what adjustment may occur for next year. The pay scale is reviewed annually as part of the collective bargaining agreement. Within this agreement, it states that the pay scale shall be adjusted as it is consistent with the change in the consumer price index, also known as the CPI. Currently, the CPI is showing an 8% increase from 2022 due to inflation. This does not mean that all of our 19 full-time employees here at the city would receive an 8% wage increase for 2023. So what it would mean is that our current pay scale would need to shift both the minimum and the maximum ranges 8% up. So there are 9 newer employees who are currently at the minimum of their pay range for their position, and they would essentially fall off of the pay scale. So I'm gonna just pull up the pay scale. So at their current wage, if we were to shift the pay scale that by the 8% that it's being suggested per the collective bargaining agreement, they would fall off of the pay scale, and we would have to adjust those nine newer employees by 8%. The total increase to their pay for the new minimum for their positions would have an impact to the 2023 budget of about $28,175. That's for the 2023 budget. These are also employees who are kind of split up between general fund, water, sewer, and also the building department. We wanted to get this in front of you tonight just so that you can get a pulse on where is the wage scale going to be at for 2023, and this is kind of what it's looking at. So I have the current 2022 wage or pay scale, and as well as the proposed for 2023 and what it's looking like. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take those for you, but we're hoping to bring this forward to a regular meeting in the future.
And just one add-on, I had a conversation with Councilmember Henry earlier in the day, just as a little bit of more specific detail. None of the top fourth of your top pay employees, so city manager, public services director, finance director, community development director, or frankly the city clerk, are anywhere close to that minimum pay increase. So those positions would be eligible for a 3% increase. So when Lynn mentioned, the entry level pay is moving up, and if someone was at that, it would go up to the 8%. That wouldn't be impacted by your highest paid. It wouldn't impact your highest paid employees. So, not that it means it's less significant as far as like there's still a cost to this, but there can be, and there was some confusion around department heads and the city manager possibly getting an 8% increase, which wouldn't happen with this adjustment. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome.
I don't have any questions. I think this is pretty straightforward, and it's crazy times we're living in.
Yeah, I have a couple.
Go.
So it says that they're following the consumer price index. Is that generally what the collective bargaining unit goes by when we get into our negotiations?
Yeah, so we have specific language that calls out the Federal Reserve calculator on the Minneapolis Federal Reserve site. So it's because of kind of that, you can Google CPI and get probably as many different answers as you want to find. So when negotiating that, we put that specific piece in. And again, this is only required for employees within the collective bargaining agreement, and typically it's matched, but you're certainly not required to.
Okay. Well, in my opinion, I can't imagine not matching. That seems ridiculous. I'm a little bit confused. So the ones that are going to fall off, no one is actually getting an 8% raise, or the lowest ones are?
The lowest 9 will have to, in order to become back on the minimum.
On the minimum, okay.
Of the new scale.
Okay.
Because they're in the minimum of the current scale.
Correct.
Okay.
I was gonna show like a dot, like dot, 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 here they are, and then watch them falling off, but
Okay.
I didn't know if that would be.
Nope, I just wanted to clarify that to make sure I had it right. That's all I have.
You good, Glenn?
Yes.
Any comments?
After it was explained to me, I was perfectly fine with how the scale was. I was coughing a little bit, choking on my coffee earlier. 8% raise.
And imagine if I had an issue with that. That would be shocking. Okay, all right, then, thank you.
Yes.
Moving on to city manager's report,
I have none this evening.
council requests.
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything either, but I sure am looking forward to the reports during our our meeting tonight on the.
Yeah, just as a preview, I'm gonna ask the council to have that be the first update to let Dan Lanas present on the water issue subject or water subject
Okay.
first. Feel like
Okay.
we're on Burgundy right now.
All right, then with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, I think, Glenn.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember Henry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right.